decided to make the move to OneNote in your classroom. That is super exciting. I am very happy about that. There's a few things we need to talk about before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of how to set it up, why we're setting up, different methods to set it up, and the new setup process. So if you're familiar to OneNote, the setup process is going to be different than how it has been in the past. There's going to be two pieces of terminology we need to absolutely understand, and then there's another component that we'll talk about later and how it affects your setup process. So the first two pieces of terminology that we need is the distinction between a course, looks like this tile on your screen, and a class, which is the sections, what Canvas calls sections in your class. When you build a notebook with the new method, it has the design for one notebook for the course. The course contains all of your classes that pertain to that particular subject matter. So for instance, if you teach a pre-AP math course or an advanced math course, then you would have one notebook for all students within that course, regardless of whether you see them first period, second period, fourth period, and eighth period. You're going to have all four of those classes, 1, 2, 3, 4, in the same notebook. Now, conversely, if you have a regular course, and you meet during periods 3, 5, 6, and 7, then you're going to have those four classes, even I do it, those four classes in a separate course. That course will have its own notebook. So you would end up having a regular notebook with a regular course and an advanced notebook with an advanced course. Now, what this means for your setup process. A lot of teachers liked to do it where they would have a different notebook for each class. That is still possible. You can still have a different notebook for each period of class that you have. However, when you do that, it cannot be managed through Canvas. You're going to be manually dropping a list of your students that you get from Skyward into the Add Students to this notebook list in OneNote, and it will not be connected to Canvas at all. They are two different things. When we take a notebook and we connect it to a Canvas course, the new process means you build the notebook first. OneNote has to happen first. And then you take the Canvas course and you connect it to that notebook. And then as your students navigate that connection, their names will populate in your class notebook for you. So that is the convenient way to do this. This is the way I encourage you to do it. There are still teachers who would like to do an individual notebook for every class that they have, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. That is a perfectly acceptable method, and that method has been used with class notebooks for many years. This Canvas integration, the setup process, is now different, where you have to create the notebook first and then connect Canvas to the notebook after you create it. So that's the process we're going to go through. That's the easiest process for teachers, and it also keeps all of your pre-AP classes along the same path. That way classes don't get too far apart in content from each other. It allows you to keep them more on track with each other. Now I will show you later on in other videos how to create distribution groups, what OneNote calls a distribution group. You can create distribution groups where you group your students into those classes, first period, second period, third period, whatever. And how you can use OneNote to navigate the homework. So you can have students submit their homework through Class Notebook and then lock the page after the submission date, and nobody else can submit until you unlock it at a later date. So there's some ways that we can go about this, and we'll talk about those in later videos. But for those of you who are used to doing multiple notebooks, one for each class of students, not necessarily one notebook for the whole course, for those of you who used to doing the individual notebooks for each class, I would strongly encourage you to try doing OneNote this way. Try it where you have one notebook to manage for the entire course. That way all of your students stay relatively on the same track throughout the entire track of the year. Okay? So now that we've got that out of the way, we've talked about courses and classes and the big distinction, and we've talked about the OneNote notebook setup process and how it's a little bit different. Now, the next video is setting up that first notebook. So stay tuned, hit that next button, and here we go. Happy OneNoting.